This fucked me up for a while. I'm still not completely okay, but it's easier to cope. It was the middle of summer and my parents had left for the weekend to go to our house in the Cape Cod. It's about a 2-hour drive away, so it's no big deal for them to leave me alone for a few days. My mom had made some pulled pork and pasta for me to heat up, to eat whenever, and I had some money if I wanted to order a pizza. Things were all good. The first night I was alone, I stayed up till 3 in the morning, playing Xbox, so I woke up really late the next day. I checked my phone when I woke up, and saw it was a little past 1. I had made plans to play some street hockey with my friends at 3, so I threw myself out of bed and stumbled into the shower. I take really long showers, so when my parents are gone I go mental. I was in there for about 45 minutes on my phone, scrolling through Reddit and Twitter and whatnot, when I heard my back door open. The bathroom is directly up the stairs from the back door, and the thing is pretty loud when it opens and closes. I immediately froze, since obviously I was supposed to be alone. I waited for about 2 minutes, ears trained in trying to hear anything else. Nothing. I figured it was just the wind or maybe my parents were home early. So I turned off the shower, wrapped my towel around myself, and slowly walked down the stairs to check it out. So the stairs to the kitchen, where the back door is, are pretty tight and walled in, so I can't see into the kitchen when I walk down. Even though my house is old as shit, and each step on the stairs makes a super loud creak, I still took my time and tried to be as quiet as possible. I probably took 45 seconds walking down all 12 of the stairs, so when I get to the second to last stair, right before I could see around the corner into the kitchen, I take a little breath to compose myself. In my mind, I knew I was being stupid. There obviously wasn't anything in the kitchen. There's no way I wouldn't have heard another noise, and there's no reason for them to still be in the kitchen, even if there were burglars or something in the house. After sort of mentally chastising myself for being such a wuss, I sort of chuckled to myself for being so stupid, and just normally walked the last 2 stairs and turned the corner into the kitchen. Standing about 2 feet away from me in the middle of my kitchen is a man, staring straight at me, perfectly still, with a massive smile across his face, just staring at me. The thing I remember most vividly wasn't his face or his smile, but his arms. They weren't just at his side, he held them in the strangest, most abnormal position I've ever seen. They were where one would normally hold their arms, but he had rotated them to the point where they were almost completely reversed, as well as lifting them up and a little behind himself. I don't know why I remember this so much, but it's just the most demonic, abnormal position I've ever seen. Honest to God, I think I almost had a heart attack right there. Looking back, I can realize how fucking creepy this situation was. But in the moment, I just took a step towards him and punched him as hard as I could in the jaw, sort of half slapping, pushing him toward the ground. The second I connected, I beelined up the stairs, dropping my towel in the kitchen with my heart beating out of control. I fucking sprinted into my room and locked the door behind me. I quickly put a chair up against the doorknob like you see in TV. Almost without thinking, I immediately dialed 911 and, nearly in tears, told the operator what happened. As I sat on the floor of my room, in practically the fetal position, staring at the door praying that a cop would be here soon, I noticed the light coming from the gap between my door had stopped. The fucker was standing outside my door. There's no words to describe the feeling I had. I was paralyzed with fear, watching the shadow across the bottom of the door shift in tiny ways. I stayed balled up, staring at the gap, praying the man would go away for what seemed like an hour. All the while the 911 operator was asking, "Hello, sir? Sir, are you there? Hello?" I did want to make a noise, even if I wanted to move my arms to bring the phone to my mouth. I don't think I could have. Eventually the light returned to the gap and I heard the faintest of footsteps, slowly creaking the wooden floorboards as he walked down the hall. It was silent for minutes as I just sat there curled up, unable to even speak. I heard banging on the front door and the sound of 2 officers entering my house. I finally felt safe, and I opened the door to the 2 of them standing there. I almost cried. Nowadays my parents don't leave me home alone anymore, thank God. And I check every lock in the house before going to bed. I still get nightmares occasionally. And my heart starts racing whenever I see someone standing still. But I'm doing all right. Even working with sketch artists in a few lineups, the police never found whoever the fuck was in my house. That sends shivers down my spine every time I look outside, half expecting to see him standing across the street smiling under a lamppost. I have no idea what he wanted, or who he was, but regardless, let's not meet. Ever. Again. I often spent my childhood alone. Aside from the company of my beloved pets, a handful of cats and a pair of dogs. My parents worked in the city, and the commute was one thing, but their detours to the gym or a friend's house consumed most of their time, and left me to my own devices until easily 6 o'clock in the evening. I grew accustomed to being the caretaker, tending to the animals and then cleaning up the house until they came home. I wasn't allowed to have friends over very often, being that my parents were, and still are, very private people. That or unsupervised kids were a liability for them. Either way, I had to manage a fairly large house by myself, and sometimes my brother, for a handful of hours after school. One would think I would be unnerved, but I had adopted to the responsibilities from a young age, 12 plus, and grew comfortable alone. With that in mind, this incident I'm about to describe happened a few years ago, 3 to 4 years. My timeline is a bit fuzzy. When I was 16 to 17 years old, and resided with my father until I moved to the city for college. While we changed houses very often, after my parents' divorce, my father's routine remained the same. Work until 5 o'clock, 30 to 40 minutes commute, an hour or so at the gym, and return home for the remainder of the evening between 6 to 7 o'clock at night. Given my school ended around 2:30, and I myself had a 20-minute drive from my hometown into the neighbouring city where Dad was renting, I had about 4 hours of me time. I myself fell into a comfortable routine. I'd get home and prepare a snack. I'd watch something on TV while I got situated, tend to homework, and then take a well-deserved break with a walk around the scenic trail just down the street. I'd take the dogs with me, an 80-pound collie retriever mix, Cody, and his smaller counterpart, a Papillion, Chloe, both of which were handfuls for a petite thing like myself, 5'3", female, barely 120 pounds, with a lean build enough to handle strong-willed dogs at least. My brother was still tied to the joint custody agreement, and remained at my mother's, leaving me utterly alone. I never felt nervous or afraid, either home alone or out on the trail, mostly because I was comforted by my dog's presence, and the trail's entrance being extremely close proximity to my house, less than a block. Chloe was the enabler, or the alarm system, barking at the slightest thing, which more often than not was either a squirrel or a dog from across the street. Once he got going, Cody was in full protection mode, ears perked, lips curled in a snarl, and bellowing a series of barks that deterred anyone from even stepping onto the driveway. If you bypassed his bark, you now faced a black mass of muscle and teeth that charged at you, like the hellhound our neighbours nicknamed him to be. He's never bit anyone, we made sure of it. Starting young, my father instilled in me to make sure he was always supervised, and kept within a fenced yard or restrained on a short leash if on walks. While he never bit anyone, his aggressive nature was both a blessing and a burden, as you can imagine. In our company he was a dopey, adorable and loving thing, particularly with family, and would lay at your feet, but anyone outside familial ties, like passing friends or the UPS man, was a fair game of chase, and you'd better not come back, warning. Few people come up to me asking to pet my dogs. Cody made sure they kept their distance, and after I apologized, we adopted him. He came from a bad place. He doesn't like strangers. He's a very territorial dog, part of his breed. We went on our way. That's why I immediately grew suspicious of this one individual who was persistent on approaching me one day. Chloe, the stranger danger dog, began to yip and howl and hide behind me, while Cody charged forward, acting like a shield. The stranger, a white male mid to late 30s, dressed well enough to look like he was a native of the middle to upper class neighborhood, had come down the hill and slowed down as we were about to intersect. I stayed close to the end, leaning towards the tree, to give him room to maneuver around my dogs. But he suddenly stopped and tried to initiate a conversation. Usually we nod in acknowledgement like passing bikers, or a brief hello. But it was out of the norm to initiate a conversation with strangers. We were private, time-sensitive busybodies. I was already irate. The dogs were tangling around my feet, and I had to deal with Cody all but yanking my wrist. I didn't want to endure the bruises I knew would form if Cody continued to act up. As politely as I could, I told the man I was in a rush, and wished him a good day. However, he insisted on continuing the one-sided conversation. "Hello, how are you? What's your name? How old are you? Where's your father? You look like you're struggling there. Is he, Cody, friendly? The little one is cute. You are too. Where do you live? Nearby? Would you like me to walk you home?" I rein in Cody with much difficulty, but eventual success, and grit my teeth. "I'm fine. No, my dog is not nice. I have to ask that you keep your distance. We're fine, thank you." His eyes shift from me to Cody, assessing the situation while I try to pull Cody away, eager to make our escape. He makes a bold step forward and Cody goes berserk. I am pulled forward by the sheer strength of Cody, but manage to keep on my feet, while Chloe is barking incessantly, agitating Cody further. This man jumps back, startled by Cody as he rears on his hind legs, nearly choking himself on his collar as he tries to bite into this man. I'm panicking at this point, more so over the threat of a lawsuit and Cody being put down than possible abduction, a thought that occurs to me much later. The man leaves. However, he continues to look over his shoulder to watch me as I head urgently in the opposite direction. I turn around the bend and lose sight of him. My adrenaline is pumping, and I'm recovering from the slight heart attack after dealing with the short-lived disaster. I'm more embarrassed than scared. I'm shaking, and my dogs are obviously disgruntled. Chloe resumes to be her nosy self and sniffs everything she can while Cody is on edge, guarding both of us while I try to find a way to leave the trail and towards home. I'm now anxious and observe my surroundings cautiously. That's when I see him again, walking behind us a few yards away. He had turned around just to follow us, diverting from his original direction. I stop, make eye contact, and pull Cody closer to me. The man sees this, eyes both Cody and I, while Chloe notices the abrupt stop. At that moment, I turn suspicious and think the worst. No longer was he just an overly friendly animal lover like I originally assumed, but an uncomfortable presence, possibly malicious. I want to walk up the incline ahead of us, leading into the neighborhood, and walk the extra mile just to escape him, but that means having to turn my back on him and risk an assault from behind. Cody ducks his head low, eyes glaring at him. And I know even if he did get close, Cody would be the first to make contact. And that scared me more than anything. I did not want either of us in the position to get hurt, and I did not know what this man was capable of. For now, Cody kept him at bay, and that's what convinced me to turn forward and jog, more like sprint, up the hill. Both dogs kept pace, being more athletic than I was, despite only quitting sports a year prior. I'm out of breath by the time we reach the half-mile hike up the steep incline, and instinctively look back to see the man isn't far behind. My heart is beating against my chest and my body runs cold. The best solution was to outrun this man and hope to make a turn at the end of the street before he sees us make it, and use that time to make another detour to shortcut home in the endless labyrinth we called our neighborhood. "Run," I command, pulling both of their leashes. I sprinted, the dogs happy to drag my weak ass the distance, and I instruct them with a tug to turn left into the street. Our figures now obstructed by a row of condensed houses. We cross the street towards another intersection. By then, I was well within a block of my house, and we make our destination in record time, leaving the man behind before he could see where we went. I'm struggling with the keys, shaking, thinking if he turned left like we did, He will cross our street inevitably. I finally opened the door and rushed them inside, closing both screen and heavy door behind me, with a satisfactory click as I twist the lock into position. I make rounds around the house, checking the windows, closing blinds and curtains, locking both garage and basement door, since it was a split-level house with the basement more so a lower level than an actual basement. I jumped every time the dogs barked, fearing the man had followed or he would be drawn to the ruckus. I hid upstairs and peeked through my dad's window that peered over the yard, and did my best to be subtle. I called my dad to tell him what had happened. I was instructed to keep the house locked and remain out of sight. Cody won't let anyone inside. That's his job. I'll be home soon. Soon meant 2 hours later as he pulled up into the driveway, signaled by the garage door opening and his headlight burning through the windows of the living room. Cody waited at the kitchen door, opening into the garage, sitting patiently as he wagged his tail excitedly. Chloe hopped about like a rabbit, and howling like a banshee. I was no longer scared now my father was home. An intimidating black man of 6 feet, broad shoulders, and as fit as he was a decade ago when he played varsity football. After he graduated, he served as a bodyguard, and then into business where he made a successful career. We whipped up some dinner, settled watching some TV show, and went to bed around 10. It was around 3 o'clock in the morning when Chloe began to bark, provoking Cody to do the same. The commotion had woken both Dad and we pegged it off to something minor. An old house like the one we resided in made a noise here and there, or the neighbors came home late again. Something to shrug off. I heard Cody's nails scratch the floor as he charged towards the door growling. Dad yells to keep the noise down and goes back to sleep. Cody barking was one thing. Growling meant another. Something or someone was at the door. I went to Dad's room trying to wake him up. Of course, he slept like a rock, and was determined to stay in bed despite being disturbed by the ruckus of the dogs. "Dad, wake up," I urged. "Make sure no one is at the door." Eventually he succumbed and waved me off with an irritated shove. He climbed out of bed and made the short trip to the main foyer, turning on the lights. "Go back to your room," he ordered me. I obeyed without much of a fuss. I didn't hear him come up for quite some time. I began to worry. I ventured outside my door, peeking downstairs. Dad had gone into the kitchen, armed himself with a flashlight, and made his way back to the front. I heard the door open and assumed both Dad and Cody went outside while Chloe screamed. Yes, she screamed. Howled, wailed, whatever you prefer, as she always did when she was separated from her partner in crime. The door opened again, and I heard both of them shuffle in. Dad closed the door and promptly locked it while Cody made his way up the window, eagerly watching. I said go back to bed. Dad snapped at me. "No one's there." I thought it was just paranoia, and I forced myself to forget about it. That is, until he addressed me later the next evening, asking me what this man looked like. "Why?" I asked. "Did you see him?" He chewed over his words before speaking again. "Make sure you lock the doors and always have Cody outside with you. I don't want you to go out alone, understand?" I nodded. "Tell me, Dad, did you see someone outside last night?" He paused before nodding. "I saw someone hiding in the bushes, and he ran as soon as I caught the son of a bitch. I don't think he'll be coming back, but just in case, be cautious." Dad never issued a police report for a variety of reasons I'll never understand, but both he and Cody made quite an impression, as the man never showed up again. We moved some time later, when my dad settled 30 miles across the state with my stepmother. Cody has long since passed away, quietly and comfortably in his sleep, at the ripe age of 16. I'll remember him as a comforting presence and a faithful friend. Chloe is still around, now accompanied by my stepmom's Boston Terrier, whom she's made fast friends with. I'll never forget both Cody and that creep that camped outside our house for whatever reason. Man with boundary issues, worrying intentions, and questionable sanity. Let's not meet again. I had a long day at school this Tuesday. As if waking up at 6 wasn't bad enough. A friend who is currently staying with me was late for an important group presentation, and I somehow decided to bring him. Finally, the long day had nearly come to an end, totaled at about 18 hours. I had to stay extra late because of a mandatory pickup day for one of my student films. I am a post-secondary student, by the way, and this was the best availability for the group. The producer was trying to find rides home for everyone, mainly the actors. Due to exceeding our budget previously, she had to cough up her own money for Ubers, taxis. As bad as shit's been this school year, I couldn't let her spend any more money. So I agreed to take whoever lived closest to me. Seems like I'd only need to bring one person with me, and that was Jason, our lead actor. Funny enough, closest to me in this situation meant a couple of cities away. I usually get free parking at specified areas around school, and seeing as to how the spot I chose last week helped me avoid a shooting in the area, I figured, why not park here again? It was either have Jason wait with other crew members who were also waiting for rides, or have him come to my car with me. I figured him coming would be a lot faster. After about 10 to 15 minutes of walking, we reached my car. I usually have a habit of locking the doors every time passengers, enter the vehicle. This time, though, I was a bit lax and happened to leave the doors unlocked. I do keep 360 vision on my car through windows and mirrors, though. I pulled out the GPS on my phone, and Jason was surfing on his while we chatted. At this time, a man of about 6 feet tall or so happened to appear around 16 feet away from the car. He was standing in a shaded area, so I didn't notice him in the already dark exterior at the beginning. When he stepped into the light, I noticed he happened to be walking towards my vehicle. There were other vehicles around, so I assumed he might be walking towards his own car, or maybe even the bushes to smoke or something. There was a lot of forestry behind where I parked. He eventually reached 10 feet away from my car, and my eternal paranoia kicked in. I instantly locked all the doors on the car and proceeded to try mapping the address to Jason's house. Said stranger had now passed my car's headlights, and was a bit too close to the vehicle for my liking. I tried to perish the thought, and looked back at the map, until I heard someone from outside trying to open the door to the seat right behind Jason. Jason and I both put down our phones and looked at each other speechless. I couldn't even process what was happening, until 2 seconds had passed. I lost the ability to speak, and the only word capable of coming out of my mouth was, "Nope." I had never taken off the parking brake, and hit drive so quick in my life, still uttering that one word. I slightly mentioned the shooting in the area earlier. There's actually been 3 of them in the past 2 weeks. That was the first and only thing that passed my mind during that 2-second thought process where I stared at Jason and crept my view over to the stranger. Needless to say, if I will be staying at school late in the future, I will never park there again. Too long, didn't read. After a long day, an actor for my film needed a ride home. I decided to bring him home, and upon entering my car, a stranger tried to jump in. I sped off instantly. 3 shootings have taken place in the area within the last 2 weeks. Frightened, I will never park there again. Hey everyone, Hellfreezer again. And that's a wrap on episode 20. Nice round number, that. Many thanks to the kind folks who have allowed me to use their stories in this and all the previous videos. And thanks of course to all you good folks for listening, liking, commenting, subscribing, and even those of you who have shared the videos. It's much appreciated. It does get word around quicker and helps my numbers grow. And I know some of you have been sharing them because those subscriber numbers have actually gone up quite a bit in the last few days. At least for me, they've gone up quite a bit in the last few days. It is very much appreciated. So until next time, take very good care of yourselves. And thanks for listening.